Once the leather has been stitched, it's now time to burnish the edges. In this course I'll be teaching you what is burnishing, what leather you can burnish, the tools you'll need, how to bevel, what dye I recommend, how to dye leather edges, how to create a shine on edges. I'll show you 2 methods of applying wax on edges and also how to sand leather edges. Without further ado, let's begin this course. Burnishing is a process of applying heat by friction to a leather edge to get a smooth finish. Burnishing serves as both an aesthetic and practical purpose. It's aesthetic because it looks nice and feels smooth. It's practical because the heat produced by the burnishing compresses the leather fibers together. This creates a waterproof barrier so the leather edge won't absorb moisture, preventing the threads from rotting. Burnishing works best on vegetable tan leather. While there are exceptions to this rule, such as vegetable tan goat skin that can burnish but is not the best, generally speaking however, vegetable tan leather is the best leather to burnish. Chrome tan and combination tan leather isn't suited to burnishing like vegetable tan leather. There perhaps could be some combination tan leather that could burnish, but again, this is an exception, not a rule. A good burnish consists of first having a good foundation, and that is by having a smooth edge to begin with. An edge that has dried adhesive over the top and is uneven is not a good start. A good way is to implement a trim allowance in your projects. I choose 4mm, where the uneven, dried adhesive surface can be removed and you are left with a smooth edge. On projects where you can't implement a trim allowance, you have to use sandpaper to smooth the edge before burnishing. When the burnish is complete, you should have a smooth, consistent surface, either matte or shiny, and either dyed or undyed, depending on personal preference. You don't require a lot of tools to burnish. For burnishing, you'll need an edge beveler, edge creaser, beeswax or Columbus wax, wood slicker, refillable marker filled with dye, Tokonole, a piece of canvas, and optional is sandpaper. I'll now teach you how to burnish vegetable tan leather. We have our piece of leather from the previous course, and we're going to be beveling this leather edge because we don't want the leather edge to be mushrooming over when burnishing. Simply place the leather down, get your edge beveler, and just bevel the leather edge, and we're going to be doing this on both sides all the way around. What can happen sometimes is that the edge beveler can upset this crease line. And what we're going to do, we're going to recrease this crease line with a heated edge creaser on both sides. Now we have a better defined crease line. I forgot to mention, if you're using thin leather, you can just get some sandpaper and just bevel the leather edges using sandpaper. As you can see, we have a nice crease line and a nice beveled edge. Now we're going to stain the leather edges. To stain the leather edges, I'm going to be using a refillable marker filled with edge stain. There are some other options you can use, such as a cotton swab or a wool dauber. However, a cotton swab and a wool dauber, as you use the cotton swab or wool dauber, you'll start to run out of stain as you go along the edge. It's not too bad on an item such as this because this is quite small, but on a belt, for example, you'll have streak marks, especially if you're using a cotton swab because it's a lot more smaller. A wool dauber won't be as bad, but the point is the benefits of using a refillable marker is as you stain, you have a continuous supply of stain being fed through to the leather edge from the reservoir. Also, another thing as well, these can be reused over and over again and they're very useful. What I use is a powder that I mix with water, and that's what makes the edge stain. So pretty much what we're doing, we're just staining the leather edge or dyeing the leather edge. The 3 colors I have are black, dark brown and golden brown in the powder based dyes. And for this purpose I have some different color wood slickers. For dark brown and black I use this one here, and if you are using no stain you should have a wood slicker that has no stain on it. In regards to how much stain I use to fill up this marker, I use about this much of the powder to fill up this refillable marker before I fill it up with water, and then you shake it and then it's all ready to go. It's about a tablespoon, give or take, depending on the size of your refillable marker. And what you're aiming for is to have a rich color of stain. You don't want to have more of a watery with a bit of stain, you want to have a rich color stain. And you can also get the dyes that are already made up, but I just use the powder based, and I just mix it with water. If you're not staining the leather edges, you can just simply get some water on your finger, and then, or you can fill these up with water, but I find just using some water on your fingers is quite effective as well. In regards to this powder, you just want to be careful because the powder is very, very active. A little bit of water on any little touches of powder, it will easily stain. I'm just going to go over how I stain this leather edge. And you would usually think that, okay, well, I should just stain from the top, and there you go. Well, you can do that, but I found that some leathers, they can absorb stain into the edges much more easier. And for this reason, I like to stain on an angle, because what will happen is that stain will flow back into the edge as opposed to flowing onto the edge. So that's what I like to do. And it's pretty much up to you how many times you stain. About 2 or 3 times is fine. And what we're going to do, we're going to stain one side first, then we're going to burnish it, and then we'll move to the next, stain it, burnish it, next, stain, burnish, etc. Because what you'll find, if you stain every single edge, then you have to try and hold it and not get stain on your fingers. What we'll do is get our stain, and what we'll do, we'll just simply get our wood slicker and burnish. I prefer to use this one here. You can use this one if you like. Sometimes I just prefer to use this one just because it's a lot more easy to get that flexibility around the edges. Simply just look at the edges. If you want to stain it again, you can. I might just do one more stain. And again, it's up to you how much you want the edge to look like. And as you can see, we've done a good job at avoiding getting stain on the leather edge. I think this leather in particular is not too bad. If you get a bit of stain on, you can easily just remove it. And it just depends on the surface of the finish surface of the leather. If it's very raw, for example, like a natural vegetable tan leather, you'll find that the stain will just absorb very much into the surface, and you can't really do much about it when that happens. Move on to the next edge. I do really prefer I do like staining the leather edges. It just adds a nice depth of color to it. The benefits are of the simple black, dark brown. They're quite easy to use across different colors of leather. So for example, blue, you can use a black for blue. With orange, the brown goes very well with the orange. So even those simple colors of black, dark brown, and a lighter color like golden brown, they can be very useful to use on even colors like this. You don't have to actually get an orange stain, for example. It's up to you. You can use an orange stain if you want, you know, or a green stain or a blue stain or a yellow stain on, you know, to match the leather color. But again, sometimes you can just get away with using, you know, these simple colors, and you should still strive for a high quality edge. The next thing we're going to do is apply some Tokonole to the edge. And this is just going to bring up more of a higher shine to the edge. And I just simply like to use the wood slicker to apply it. It's very useful, very handy, and you can just simply clean off the wood slicker afterwards with a canvas, and then you can reuse it. What we'll just apply the Tokonole. We'll just even it out with the wood slicker. And again, we'll just apply it to one side because we don't want to apply it to every side and then have to try and juggle and avoid getting Tokonole and dye on our hands. Burnish it in. And then what you can do is just get a canvas cloth and then buff it. You can remove some of the excess dye on the leather edge. So if you do apply a bit much of an excess, you can remove it, or the canvas will generally take some of that excess off. And then we'll just work our way around the leather edge. And when you stain leather edges, it's just interesting to see how, if you can keep your hands clean, because it's very easy to get stain on your fingers. If you do get stain on your fingers, just be very careful that you don't get any on the leather surface. And with this stain here, it rinses with water very easily. It might stain your hand, of course, but the stain will give it some days and your hands will be clean again. But just be very careful if you do get stain on your fingers with touching the leather surface. If you go around your leather edge, you might notice the Tokonole, because it absorbs the stain, it can just be seeping over the leather edge. And especially with white thread, you just want to be very careful that that Tokonole doesn't get actually on the thread, because if it has stain on the Tokonole, then your thread will no longer be white thread. That's just one thing to be considered. It's up to you whether you want to apply a bit of an extra layer of Tokonole, but you'll find that after the Tokonole layer has applied, the leather tends to smooth up and get a nice shine very easily. What you can do is get your canvas and just go on an angle to remove that excess on the edge. And then when you burnish it, you can just prevent having excess on the edge. And then what you can do is just get your wood slicker and then just clean off the Tokonole with the canvas. If you have any stain on your hands, just make sure we'll go wash our hands now, because we don't want to be risking getting any stain on the leather surface. What I've done is I've just washed my hands. What we have is we have three options to finish our leather edge. We can simply just leave it how it is. Tokonole does a nice job. You can leave it how it is if you like. Or we have two options to finish the leather. We have beeswax or a hard wax like Columbus wax. Beeswax has the additional benefit of being heated into the leather edge, whereas Columbus wax, you don't really need to heat it into the leather edge. This is a softer wax, this is a harder wax. This is more durable for outdoor use, etc. And this gives it more of a high shine finish. It's up to you which one you want to use. And to start off with, we're going to be using the beeswax, and then I'll show you how to use the Columbus wax afterwards. As mentioned before, you can heat this into the edge. You don't need to if you don't want to, but this allows it to be more spread evenly. And beeswax tends to give more of a matte finish as opposed to the Columbus wax high finish. But you can achieve a high finish with beeswax, it just takes a bit of burnishing. What we're going to do is we're going to just get the beeswax, and we're simply going to just use one side. And for this, I'm just going to use this side here. Just place it over the leather. With beeswax, you can put a fair amount on. You don't need to completely overdo it, but you don't need to just put a little bit on. Try and put a fair amount on. We'll then heat up the edge creaser. And I'll just wait for my finger to get warm, and I'll know that the edge creaser is heated up. And you want to be careful with the edge creaser. You don't want to completely burn the leather edge. Just be careful if you have an undyed edge or a lighter color edge. With black or dark brown, it's not too bad, but at the same time you want to be careful because you don't want to completely burn the leather edge. Simply just get your edge creaser and just go across the edge like this. And what you'll notice is that the edge will start to take on more of a matte finish. And this just allows the beeswax just to even out across the leather edge. You can just use a wood slicker, but this is a lot more better. And you can just evenly even out that beeswax. Just heat up the edge creaser again. You can get the beeswax again. Just apply another layer. More of a thinner layer, not too thick as opposed to the first layer. Just get some on the edge because the edge tends to get forgotten. When you notice the beeswax tends to start to grab with the edge creaser, it means just to stop, because you're going to start to peel off the beeswax. All you're looking for is just the beeswax to be consistent over the leather edge. About 2 layers should do. You can add another one if you like. But again, the more you add and the more you start to use heat on the edge, you just want to be very careful. There's a fine line between enough and then too much. I might add one more layer, just a thin layer. We'll put this aside, and now we'll use the Columbus wax. And the Columbus wax is a lot more simpler, and then just rub on the Columbus wax. And this is going to leave more of a higher shine compared to the beeswax. And then get your canvas. Add another layer. That is the Columbus wax. and that is the beeswax. And what I just did with the Columbus wax, you can do exactly the same with the beeswax. So you can get the cloth and burnish the beeswax. This gives it more of a shinier finish. If you like the matte finish, you can just leave it how it is. And then you can start to shine up that beeswax. Just a normal Tokonole finish looks like this. The Columbus wax. And then this is the beeswax. So that is how you finish a leather edge. Now, if you decide that you want to sand the leather edge, I'm going to show you how to do that. And with sandpaper, there are a variety of different tutorials that you can do, from starting at a lower grit and then working your way up to the thousands of grit. And that is where you get the more of this very shiny leather edges. Or you can just simply start off more of a medium grit, sand it, and then burnish it like before. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to have more of a medium grit and then burnish the leather edges like before. Now when you're sanding, obviously there's going to be fibers that are going to be coming off the leather. And for this, I like to use a respirator. So just be careful if you are in a confined space and there's leather particles flying around. You just don't want to be inhaling that. And just one thing to note is that when you finish sanding, that's when you bevel the edge. When I place the respirator on, I'm just going to leave some subtitles down the bottom if there's any directions I need you to know. So as you can see, we've got a nice smooth finish. You can start to mark that leather edge with water. It's not too bad on this leather because it's not going to stain too much compared to a natural vegetable tan leather. What I'll then do is I'll just get my edge beveler. And we'll just remove the edge on both sides. And I'll just crease these leather edges. And because it's quite wet already, we'll probably get a nice defined. And I'll stain these leather edges and then just burnish it like I normally did. And I can really feel that this is quite smooth from the sanding. We'll then apply a Tokonole. And already I can feel that this leather edge is just much more smoother compared to the previous leather edge. And as you can see, just with 600 grit sandpaper, we have that effect. So sanding does make quite a bit of a difference. And again, we're not starting from a lower grit and working our way up. We're just simply going with a medium grit. And as you can see, even with a medium grit, it's fine. And to finish off this leather surface, I'm going to be using some beeswax. And then with beeswax, what I like to do, I just like to let it set. The beeswax is still somewhat soft and just want it to let it harden up a bit. So as you can see, just with using 600 grit sandpaper, you can get a nice smooth edge. The edge on the left is with 0 sandpaper, and the edge on the right is with 600 grit sandpaper. And what you should have is this piece of leather, nice and burnished. That's it for this course. If you have any questions, feel free to get in contact with me through email or social media. Be sure to enjoy your leather crafting.